Going up, everyone. Wow. Excuse me. Radha, Radha, Kunja Vihari, Jai Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari, Radha Madhava, Kunja Madan Mohan ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gopramanande Haribo. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvise Sasanyavadi Paschati Vasatani Mokam Guru Kivasa vachalam anukulam vaiti yakripa tamaham bhakte Shri Guru Dinatana vanchakapatruvyascha Subhashindavevacha patitanam pavanita vaishnavinam Gauranga Gauranga Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Reading from the third canto, chapter 22, text number 10. This chapter is entitled The Marriage of Kardama Muni and Vibhuti. Everybody wants to help me, but I know how to take care of myself. And you'll adjust it up here, right? In front of my eyes, and I want it lower. Yes. I know you like to serve. Yada tu bhavataha Shila Shruta Rupa Bhayo Gunan Ashrinam Nārada Isha Tvai Asit Krita Nischaya Yadatu Bhavata Shila Shrutarupa Bhayogunan Ashinan Naradaresha Thayasit Kritanisjaya Yadatu Bhavata Shila Shrutarupa Bhayogunan Ashinan Naradharesha Tvayasit Kritanisjaya Yadatu Bhavata Shila Shrutarupa Bhayoguna Bhayo Ashinan Naradharesha Isha Tvayasit Tvayasit Kritanisjaya Ashinan Naradaresha Varupavayogunam Ashinan Naradadesha Tvayasit Krita Nishchaya. Anyone else? Ladies? Word meanings? Yada, when, to, but, bhavataha, your, shila, noble character, shruta, learning, rupa, beautiful, beautiful appearance, bhayaha, youth, gunan, virtues, ashrinot, heard, Nāradat, from Nārada Muni, Esha, Devahuti, Tvai, in you, Asit, became, Krita Nishchaya, fixed in determination. Translation. The moment she, which is Devahuti, heard from the sage Nārada of your noble character, your is Kardama Muni. So the moment Devahuti heard about the noble character of Kardama Muni, his learning, his beautiful appearance, youth, and other virtues, she fixed her mind upon you, or upon him. I'll read it again. The moment she heard from the sage Nārada of your noble character, learning, beautiful appearance, youth, and other virtues, she fixed her mind upon you. Purport. The girl Devahuti did not personally see Kardama Muni, nor did she personally experience his character or qualities, since there was no social intercourse by which she could gain such understanding. But she heard about Kardama Muni from the authority of Nārada Muni. Hearing from an authority is a better experience than gaining personal understanding. She heard from Nārada Muni that Kardama Muni was just fit to be her husband. Therefore, she became fixed in her heart that she would marry him, and she expressed her desire to her father, who therefore brought her before him. Now, in this portion of Bhagavatam, we're starting to learn something about Grihastha Ashram, and it's beginning with teaching us how a man and a woman come together and meet. And as you know, in traditional Vedic culture, there was little, if any, social intercourse, mixing of men and women. So young girls and young boys didn't really have a chance to know who to marry because they weren't mixing. Even in the home, Prabhupada says, they had separate quarters for men and women. So that's an aspect of traditional culture, not only Vedic culture, but all cultures, that there was some separation between men and women. And also in traditional cultures, if you go back 100, 150 years, you will see this was true in most parts of the world. And in most parts of the world, the women were dressed very chastely, even in America. They would cover their heads and cover their entire bodies with clothing, from here all the way to the ground. That was America. Believe it or not. Can you believe it? That's how women dressed in America. So you can understand the culture was different. I don't want to say that traditional cultures were necessarily as strict as Vedic culture, because Vedic culture had a philosophy as to why to separate. But any religious culture knew that mingling of men and women creates problems. Unwanted pregnancy, and also marrying the wrong person because you fall in love, so-called. Maybe the wrong person, but you love him or her and you want to marry them. So, that wasn't possible, as we're learning from this verse, because there was no mixing. So, you could say that Devahuti was falling in love with Kardama Muni by hearing about him, but not falling in love as you would by being with a person, sensually engaged. But we can say that she was thinking, here's a real sadhu, and he would make a good husband, not for my sense gratification. Of course, every woman, they want a nice home, children, clothes, and so forth. So naturally, when they think of a husband, they think of those things. But more importantly, a woman should think about the spiritual qualities of a husband. Can he help her in her Krishna consciousness? So we can assume that was the main consideration, because she'd never seen him, so she didn't know what he looked like, so she couldn't fall in love with him physically. But she fell in love with his characteristics, his virtues, which is good. You agree? Yeah. So as contrasted to today, people fall in love for many reasons. And Krishna consciousness is probably, or religion is probably not a big concern anymore. But for devotees, it's a huge concern. Can this man help me in my Krishna consciousness? Can this woman help me in my Krishna consciousness? If this man can't help me, or if this woman can't help me, even though I like him or her, even though she's very beautiful, there's no question that we should be thinking of marriage with such a person. As with anything in our lives, if it doesn't help our Krishna consciousness, we reject it. That's the first two principles of surrender from Hari Bhakti Vilas. Anukulyasya sankalpa, anukulyasya sankalpa, partikulasya bharjana. If it's good, sankalpa, accept it. If it's not good, partikulasya, then reject it, varjana. Simple, right? Anything which is good for your Krishna consciousness, you accept it. If it's not good, you reject it. Simple, right? Not so simple. What if you become dayato visham punsam sangas teshu bacha? But he's so nice. What if you become sangat? From sangat comes kama. And from kama becomes lack of intelligence. So sometimes it is said, and it is not perhaps understood well, or used in a derogatory way, that women are less intelligent. Of course, as I often say, if you needed a bypass heart surgery, probably if your choice was a male butcher and a woman surgeon, you'd probably take the woman surgeon, wouldn't you? You wouldn't think, well, men are more intelligent, so I'll take the male butcher. I mean, they know how to cut meat, so I'll let them cut open my heart. No, you would take a woman who's trained. So it must mean something more than academic or IQ. But herein is one aspect, or maybe it is the only aspect. In Manu Samhita, it is said women should be protected. Well, one of the things they need to be protected from is their own bad judgment. Because if they mingle with men, they become attracted to a man. And he may be the wrong man, but they may fall in love. Of course, you might say, well, men have this problem also. Well, Kali Yuga, it's true. You know, Shriyo Vaishyas Tata Shudras, but in Kali Yuga, no one's even Shudra. So, you know, when we make distinctions, sometimes women are less intelligent. Men also make similar mistakes, but particularly in our Shastra, it is said women should be protected. One of the main reasons is so they don't end up in the arms and the home of a man who will mistreat and exploit them. So therefore the father, the sons, the father, he's involved in choosing. And of course here you could see that Devahuti was very intelligent. Because I would say, just like people say, are women less intelligent? I say, no. My wife is very intelligent. I say, why do you say that? I say, because she chose me as her husband. She's very intelligent. She didn't choose any fool and rascal, although I may be a fool and rascal. But at least I'm trying to be a devotee. So she chose a devotee. And she could have chose so many other people. So that's a sign of intelligence for a woman. She makes the right choice. But often we see she makes the wrong choice. She chooses the wrong man. Yes? Have you seen? Because they fall in love, yeah. So that's part of protection. Protection is to help. Sometimes the guru helps, the father, the other devotees. Now you might say, but is it impossible for her to make a right choice? No, my wife made a good choice. It's not impossible. But that's the general principle. They would get help in choosing. And what do our scriptures say? Well, you don't want to marry a Shudra man with a Brahmin girl. That'll be hell, or worse than hell. Ideally, you want to marry a Brahmin man with a Brahmin girl, Kshatriya man, Kshatriya girl, and so forth. You know, sometimes we read in your Shastra that sometimes the women had to help fight. And if you go to the Konark temple in Orissa, you'll see there, on the outside of the temple, there's women, Kshatriyas, fighting tigers. So there were women, yes, you know about Kshatriya women. So maybe a Kshatriya woman and a Brahmin man, it's okay, but maybe not the best. If she gets angry at him, could be trouble, because Brahmins don't fight. But so generally our scripture said it should be of same quality, same gana. The more similarity, the better, right? So if a woman chooses a man of the similar quality, I mean, nowadays it's different. You know, who's Brahmin, who's Kshatriya. You know? Because there's no Garbhadan samskar, so you can't really understand by birth. But still, through astrology, you can understand something. Through culture, through education, through personality, you understand something. And sometimes we know when we see a man and a woman who want to get married, sometimes we know it's a bad combination. You just know it. You can see it. They're so different, right? So therefore astrology is used to help. So in America, the women, Prabhupada was saying, not in America, Prabhupada was saying, scripture is saying, all the women should be married. So to American women, that didn't sound good, especially in 1970s. Why do we have to be married? If we're married, it means we're controlled by a man. Of course, sometimes men think like that. Why should I get married? Then I'll be controlled by a woman. The fact is, if you get married, if you're a woman, you'll be controlled by the man. If you're a man, you'll be controlled by the woman. And I would say, if you're a man, you'll be more controlled by the woman than the woman's controlled by the man. Because if a woman doesn't get her way, life is not very happy, and you'll surrender to her. Sisi Gauranitai ki jai. So, this woman who's thinking, why should I get married? And then, you know, I have to serve a man and be controlled by a man, I lose my independence and so forth. Prabhupada said, no, every woman should be married. They should be protected by a man. And then again she said, but what if I don't want to get married? And Prabhupada said, so you get pregnant. And then you have two choices. You get pregnant, the man goes away, and you have two choices. Choice one, abortion. Your country, you don't have the second choice. But in America, you have the second choice. You go on welfare. If you're a single mother, the government will give you money. If that happened in India, oh my God. All these women would get pregnant but not have a husband, and they get so much money per child. So you get welfare if you're a single woman in America. Did you know that? Yeah. Not here. No, that'd be crazy here. It would get corrupted, right? Because it's a poor country and women need money, they would have kids with many men. So, Prabhupada said, those are your two choices. If you let men exploit you, those are your two choices. And she was saying something, I can't remember how she replied to that. She would say something like, I think she said something like, but that's our choice. And before that, Prabhupada was joking with her, saying, well, men have 64 ounces of brain substance, women have 32. So he was using that to say, look at men are smarter. They have bigger brains. But nowadays we understand, according to science, brain size is. Albert Einstein had a smaller brain than Marilyn Monroe, but he was much smarter. Marilyn Monroe is an actress, who's not considered that smart, and Albert Einstein very smart, but his brain was smaller than hers. But anyway, Prabhupada used that. He was telling her that, 64-32. And when he was saying that men will exploit you, they'll get you pregnant, they'll leave you, and then you have to beg from the government or have an abortion. She said, well, that's my choice. You know what Prabhupada said? He said, therefore I say 32 ounces. So when she said that, like if you want to say women are less intelligent, you say they let men exploit them in the name of freedom, that's less intelligent. You don't. If a woman, I'm not saying all women are like that, but if a woman doesn't understand that men are exploiting them in the name of their freedom, then they're less intelligent. And then they need the protection of man to say, wait a minute, men are exploiting you, you don't realize. Oh, really? Yeah, they are. So a woman is protected by her father because her father won't let that happen. Yes? So that's something we're learning from this verse. The other point Prabhupada's making here is that what you see, if you're not evolved, cannot be the highest form of evidence, but what you hear is higher form, because you may not see that that's the wrong man, but your guru sees, or your father sees, or some elder sees. So by hearing it's the wrong man, it gives you a higher perception than by seeing, because you may see it's the right man, you may feel it's the right man, you may think it's the right man, but you hear from someone who is above you, because how we see and how those above us see may not be the same. So there's a superiority. So, you know, there are different kinds of evidence, and evidence of direct experience is not always the best evidence. Of course, it's good evidence if you're elevated, if you see Krishna everywhere. If you're beyond the modes of nature, yeah, then that's different. But for conditioned soul, sometimes what you see may not be true. Of course, right now I see that I'm in the temple in Hyderabad. So I think that's true. Is that true? And I'm seeing you. It's probably true I'm seeing you. Even though it doesn't say in Shastra I'm seeing you, I'm seeing you. So it's not that we deny common sense. It's not that we deny intuition. But in some cases our common sense will fail us. In some cases our intuition will fail us. Not always. Because if we say direct evidence is always false, then we'll turn you all into robots. You'll say, I don't know if I'm in Hyderabad. Why don't you know? Because I'm seeing a sign that says Hyderabad, but maybe I'm in illusion. Maybe I'm in Chennai. Maybe I'm in Bangalore. I can't depend on my senses, they're imperfect. No, we don't take it that far. We use common sense, but sometimes common sense will fail us in understanding transcendence, or even in this particular case, in even understanding what's right when I'm being dictated by my lower nature, by my sensual, emotional nature. As many women are when they make decisions on marriage, or when many men are when they make decisions on many things, like buying a car. You may buy a bigger car than you need, because men like big cars, right? You might buy a more expensive car than you need, because men like nice cars, right? So sometimes, when we're attached to something, we make wrong decisions. And so we need to hear from higher authorities. Yes? And then you get clarity. Yes. So, now, there's one point, it's not being made here, but I think it's of interest. You might be thinking, but Prabhuji, this story took place a long time ago, and the social conditions in our society are different. And that's true. So how do we deal with that? Because that's an important question, isn't it? Because so much of what we're hearing in Bhagavatam took place a long time ago when things were very different. So the natural question is, well, it was so different than it is today. Can we apply this exactly? And that's a very good question. When Srila Prabhupada came to America, he told the devotees, my wife was married at 6 and I was married at 11, something like that. Which was, of course, for us a shock and also illegal. I never heard of such a thing. At that time in America, even a girl marrying at 20 was young. And still in college, generally no college students were married. So Prabhupada explained, well, there's a reason behind this. He said, because the girl doesn't have to think about boyfriends. It's already chosen. It's just her mind's peaceful. So she's 16, 17, 18, whenever that age is that she'll move in, maybe even 13. But up till that age, there's no question of boyfriends or thinking about how will I get married, who will I marry. It's already settled from an early age, 6, 8, 10 years old, and the boy maybe from 16. So the boy, he doesn't have to talk to girls and think about girlfriends. He's already got a girl, and when the age is right, they'll get married. And they'll move into they won't move in, she'll move in to the parents' home, so they'll get all this guidance, right? And that's a different culture. And more we're turning away from that culture. Obviously, more and more people are moving away from their families, so you're getting less guidance at home. And in most countries, it would be illegal to be married before you're 18, I think. Is there an age here or this country? There is, but in the village, it's not followed. But let's say there wasn't a law. Let's say we could do that, but it's a different culture. So Prabhupada came to America. He explained this to the devotees there, that this is the principle, and he said, but we cannot do this in America because it's a different culture. So Prabhupada took into consideration the cultural situation. It would not be legal to do that, and it wouldn't work because men and girls are not trained. Girls are not trained to be wives, and men are not trained to be husbands. So it would be a disaster if you put them together. Unless you could put them together, unless they were compatible, they were trained that way, you could put them together in a home of their parents and be guided. So there's so many conditions that would be necessary. And we didn't have those conditions. So Prabhupada said, this is the system. He explained the principle, why it works, and then he said, we can't do it. So then he said, so many of you young boys and girls, you have girlfriends and boyfriends, so you should get married. So the basic principle Prabhupada adopted was, don't live together if you're single, because that's what they were doing in America. Boy and girl were living together. So he said, you can't live together, you have to get married. That's the principle, one wife, one husband for life. Even that was a new concept in America, because divorce was prevalent. So for life, that wasn't easy. So Prabhupada took the principle. What was the principle? You shouldn't have a boyfriend or girlfriend. If you do, you should be married. That's the principle. Your mind shouldn't be thinking of other women, other men. Just think of one. Either be brahmachari and think of 0, or get married and think of 1. What's the difference between brahmachari and grihastha? 1 and 0. That's the basic difference. And what's another difference? 2 and 0. 2 times you have sex, have 2 kids. Prabhupada said 2's enough, and business is over. So that's also another difference. Brahmachari, no sex, grihastha, 2 times. Or maybe 3 or 4, however long it takes. There's not a whole lot of difference. That was another teaching of Prabhupada. Sometimes we say grihastha ashram is a license for sense gratification. Oh, that means I go out and have ice cream and this and that. No. Prabhupada called it brahmachari grihastha. You have sex for procreation, you live simple, you're like sannyasi, renunciate. I was just reading this morning, Prabhupada was saying, if you accumulate more money than you need, it's sinful and you'll suffer. All that extra money is for preaching, for service. So Grihastha life isn't about accumulating a lot of money, eating a lot of ghee, and like that. It's basically very similar to the life of the renunciates, with some few adjustments. At least it's supposed to be. So, anyway, Prabhupada gave a principle that you should be married with one wife, and even if you don't like her, that's it, it's over. Stay with her until the point when you can become a sannyasi or vanaprastha. That was the principle, right? So Prabhupada explained this principle. The devotee said, well, you know, if you get married at an early age, or you get married, you never see your wife, there's no love there. How does it work? Prabhupada said, naturally, love develops by service. So in the modern marriage, love is first, service is second, divorce is third. In the Vedic marriage, service is first, love is second, and there's no divorce. It's a different concept. So we can't exactly apply, you know, getting people married at an early age. I mean, you could try. It could be awkward, but you have to train your children like that from the very beginning. As soon as they, you know, are 5 or 6, you tell them, you know, we're going to choose your husband, we're going to choose your wife, these are the reasons. Then there's a hope it can work. But then you're in a they're also being raised in a culture where everyone's choosing their own husband and wife, so that could be a problem. Why are you choosing? I want to choose. So there are adjustments, obviously, because we live at a different time, and everybody's influenced differently. But the principle was one husband, one wife, not for sense gratification, for service. So we have to make some kind of adjustment sometimes when we read these stories of things that happened long ago and try to understand as best we can what's applicable now, what's the principle, and what we can't follow, which as Prabhupada said, we can't make this adjustment. Maybe sometime in the future we can create a society that's more traditional, and these adjustments won't be adjustments, they'll just be the way we live. But now they're pretty big adjustments. You can see today in the movie and film industry that the concept of love has changed from this Vedic concept of love is a byproduct of service to your wife. Prabhupada, but how do you love her? You've never even met her before the wedding, or your parents chose her and they didn't tell you who she was. Or your parents chose her, you saw who she was, and that was it. You had no choice. So how does love develop? Through service, through dedication. Husband protects the wife, if somebody's serving you, the wife is such the Vedic wife is amazing. She's such an amazing servant. You wouldn't have affection for someone who's serving you like that? Of course you would. And the husband's such a great husband. He gives such care and affection to the wife. She wouldn't be affectionate to such a man? Of course. So it develops naturally. Yes, so that's the principle. Now, Bollywood is all about falling in love. Music industry is about falling in love, romance. Yes? So what is that doing to your mind, poor young ladies and gentlemen? It's destroying it. Now in your mind, you have the samskara of romance, not the samskara of a dharmic marriage. And when you have the samskara of romance, as you see now in our culture, I don't know about Hyderabad, but definitely in Kolkata, Mumbai, Delhi, probably here also, the young boys and girls are all together, so the average boy, not even today, probably 20 years ago, not the average boy, but many boys have many girlfriends, and many girls have many boyfriends before they get married. There's a problem. What's the problem? Prabhupada explains it. If a boy is raised as a brahmachari or a girl is raised to be chaste, what happens? That husband that they marry, he's everything. He's the only man. Their whole life, they've been trained to think The highest principle for a woman is chastity to her husband. In fact, Prabhupada said that the woman will receive all the pious credits of the husband. So she's thinking, I just serve my husband. Whatever spiritual activity he does, I may not get up for Mangal Arati. If he goes, I get the benefit. Not that an initiated woman would think, well, he's chanting 16, I don't have to. But we learn that in ancient times, women did not connect with Guru. Their husband was their Guru. They got the benefit. That was the culture. I can't say all women weren't initiated, but to my knowledge, it was not common that women, they weren't Gurukulas for women. There might be some women sages you read about that stayed in some ashram and this and that. But to my knowledge, that's the exception. There might, one godbrother told me there was a brahmacharini ashram in Vedic times, but it's an exception. Women rishis were not the norm. So the norm was they get married, they didn't go to Gurukula, their husband went to Gurukula, the husband became the Guru. So the husband was everything. He was their Guru, they served him. And that was it. And Prabhupada said, naturally, for a woman, that's the first man, and that's it. She's in love and there. And for the man, he was also trained. One woman, no girlfriends before marriage. This is your duty as a man, so on and so forth. So that's the principle. Now you're in a culture where so many boys before they get married and so many girls before they get married had many boyfriends and girlfriends. So Prabhupada said, this is the reason for divorce. Because they didn't go to school, Gurukula, live with the Guru, learn about chastity and brahmachari life, and the girls weren't trained by their mothers. Now they're being trained by Bollywood and Hollywood and MTV and rock and roll. Baby, when I look in your eyes, my world is shaking, and I can only think of you. That's their training. Those samskaras are there. They're definitely there. Yes? They're there. So Prabhupada's saying that is the cause of divorce, because they've had so many boyfriends and so many girlfriends. They're practically ruined. So what are the chances that they're going to stick it out with one husband and one wife in the MTV Bollywood culture, where 30 years ago or 20 years ago, you couldn't even kiss in a Bollywood movie. Now look at it. Yes? Where women, only wore clothes that covered them. Now look at it. They've imported American culture. They're praising American culture. And so what's American culture based on? Money and sex. That's it. So that's what you're importing. And when you import that, women will leave their husbands if they don't have enough money. Sometimes that happens. Or as Prabhupada said in the Bhagavatam, when they're not satisfied with sex, then there's divorce. So you've been raised in a culture where it's all about sex and money. And you have many boyfriends and girlfriends. You're not used to sticking with one man or one woman. You haven't done it. It's very, very difficult for young boys and young girls now. And these poor young boys, everywhere they look, there's pictures of women on billboards. Even you're looking out the temple and you're seeing it. Hare Krishna. Okay, everyone, I'm going to show you. I'm sitting in the temple. Look what I have to look at. See that billboard? Yeah. You can't get away from it. And the way women are dressing now, yeah, you can't. So, and 20, 30 years ago, if you had illicit sex, that was really bad. Nobody would talk to you, right? You were an outcast. Now, if you don't have illicit sex, you're an outcast. Things are changing, right? So, my point is that we may not be able to exactly implant Vedic culture as it was in ancient times, but certainly we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You can't throw out the principles. And as far as possible, we try to follow that culture where we can follow it and where people can understand it and relate to it and practice it. And I think it's very important for us to understand the principles behind the practices. Otherwise, you'll look at the practice and go, well, this is really bad, you know, marrying girls when they're 6 and so forth. You'll think, we can't follow that. That must be Manu Samhita, and that's, you know, another age. Yes, we can't follow that now, but we can follow the principle. And if you understand the principle, it helps you in your own spiritual life. Just like a young boy may see a beautiful, sundari, beautiful woman, and she's looking at him. And he's starting to melt. But if he's trained properly, he'll think, no, my parents will help me find the right woman who will be the Dharma Patni, the right woman to help me in my Krishna consciousness. So it doesn't matter how rich, beautiful, attractive she is, it doesn't affect him. Because he understands the goal of life is Krishna consciousness, and the choice of woman or man, we can say men also, women also, the choice of partner is based on what will make me Krishna conscious. That's ingrained in their heart, and therefore they won't be illusioned by the attractive man or the beautiful woman. Because that's not their goal. But if you follow the Bollywood samskars, that's what's important, right? So the guys are at the gym, pumping up to get the big muscles. The ladies are on the whatever it is, what do you call it? Treadmill, you know, losing weight, looking, you know. I don't know about your gyms, but the gyms in America, there's mirrors everywhere. So you can see how much weight you lose, right? And, you know, looking sexy. So it's all about how do you look, right? Because you want to get the most beautiful. I mean, come on, guys. If your wife isn't beautiful, that's a degradation in your status. If your husband's not big muscles, strong, rich, drives a nice car, ladies, people will denigrate you. They'll think, oh, who are you? Look at your husband. He just works in the post office and takes a bus to work. Isn't it? So you want to look good, you know, get the right husband, right wife. These are the Bollywood samskars, which are completely destroying culture. This is not culture. This is animal culture. And Prabhupada has said it. This is animal culture. He said it clearly. And it's very powerful if you understand all these beautiful movies and everyone's falling in love and the music is playing and you're crying. This is animal culture. This is not Dharma. You have to see through it. Otherwise, oh, it was such a nice movie. They fell in love. Yeah. They fell in love. They had children like cats and dogs, as Prabhupada said. Heavy words. And 6 years later, they got divorced because she found another guy in the office who was nicer to her. This is reality. And we have to understand this reality. And Prabhupada has explained it all in his books. We just have to translate it into what it means right here today in this world. And if you do, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to be celibate and to be chaste to one woman or one man. Otherwise, with Bollywood samskars, to be chaste to one woman or one man, oh my God, that's going to become like really rare in 10 or 20 years. You're still married to the same guy? Oh my God, what's wrong with you? That guy is such a loser, you know? He's just a clerk in this company, you know? He's going nowhere. Why don't you divorce him? And, you know, that other guy, you know, vice president. Now, that guy. You'll go somewhere with him. Yeah, that's Bollywood, right? That's modern society. Once Prabhupada was glorifying a couple. The man had no money. They were living on the street, and the wife was there cooking on the street. She'd never leave him. Prabhupada was glorifying. He said, this is love. And he's only making like $150,000 a month, and the guy next door is making 3 lakhs. She's going to divorce him and marry that guy. Yes? Yes. If it's not happening now, just give it another decade or two. It'll be common. Believe me. So we need to understand these things. This is animal culture. This may be glamorous, it may be popular, it may look good, but it's animal culture. It's not our culture. So we need to understand our culture. Don't throw our culture out because we can't apply everything today. We apply it practically as we can, as best we can. But we understand the principle. So I will end here. And I'm still alive. Nobody killed me for saying all that. That was pretty heavy, right? You didn't shoot me. So, they didn't shoot, nobody shot me there either. Okay. I'm still alive, and I said all that. I'm just repeating Prabhupada, so, I try to make sure I can back everything up. I'm actually a very liberal person, and I understand the conditions of modern society and all the conditioning and how we have to adapt. I think that's very important, but I think we have to keep everything in balance. Adaptation, but understanding tradition. They have to go together. If it's just tradition and no adaptation, we'll be irrelevant. If it's just adaptation and no tradition, we'll become like everybody else, right? So there's a balance. Okay, any questions or comments or disagreements? I want to see if anybody here had any questions. Mangala Mai, nice name. I like that. Full of auspiciousness. Yes. Louder?
I just wanted to seek your clarification and suggestion and advice on a situation I see very often.
Okay, a situation, I'm going to repeat the question. He wants my advice on a situation he sees very often.
So there are many cases where the husband gets serious in Krishna consciousness after he gets married. Then by the time the wife was not a devotee to him in marriage, then now he's stuck actually. Now stuck, he just cannot see it through and he just cannot survive in marriage. So he just doesn't know what to do. Actually.
All right, okay. Okay, so he's asking that husband and wife are married before they're devotees, and then the husband becomes a devotee, but the wife is not interested, or vice versa. Both things happen, yes? Wife becomes a devotee, the husband uninterested. What to do? This happened to a devotee, and this is a little bit of an ambiguous answer. This happened to a devotee, and Prabhupada asked the question, and he asked Prabhupada the question, and Prabhupada said, do what's favorable for your bhakti and avoid what's unfavorable. Now that could be misunderstood, because that sounds like, well, what's favorable is just leave the marriage and move into the brahmacharya ashram. That would be favorable. Especially if you don't have any kids, and just give her back to her parents and Hare Krishna. It's all simple and the business is finished. I don't think that's what Prabhupada meant, although that could happen, and they could mutually agree, and that you might by your karma have like so much sannyas samskara that you're driving her completely crazy, and she would actually be happy if you moved in the ashram, and so would you. So that could be. I'm not saying it's common, but it could be. But I think, or at least one thing we can understand that Prabhupada meant was that maybe in that situation, taking care of the needs of your wife, especially if you have children, to a point that she would give you the freedom to cultivate your Krishna consciousness, so it would be a good compromise, would be what he meant. So taking her out here or there, doing this and that, would actually be conducive to your bhakti, because by doing that, she would let you go to the temple every morning and so forth. So I think that's something to consider. That's where I normally start with these situations. So like, okay, is your wife 100% against Krishna? No, not 100%. Then take care of her needs, make sure she's satisfied, discuss it, and so that she's okay with you coming. And sometimes you may have to miss programs, because you'll need to do something with the family. Do that. But in the ultimate long run, that will be best for your Krishna consciousness. And then, when you're older, 50 plus, naturally detachment sets in. And the kids are grown up, and she's been fulfilled, so there'll be less demands on you, and there'll be more time for Krishna consciousness. When you're younger, the wife has more demands, more needs. She wants more of your time and more emotional support. When you're older, she'll need less of it. And there is always the possibility she may come to Krishna consciousness at a later date. I think the difficulty is when the wife is completely 100% against. That is a tough situation, and what I've seen in those situations is kind of an incompatibility that seems to resolve itself, that they can't live with one another. He can't give up his Krishna consciousness. She wants to eat meat, have sex, and so forth. It's really difficult for him. He can compromise, but not sufficiently to satisfy her. And because she's not satisfied, she doesn't want him. He can't give her anything. He gives her a place, but nothing else. So sometimes those marriages become incompatible, unfortunately. And you could say Krishna consciousness is the cause. And you could say, well, as a good wife, she should follow her husband, and she didn't, and therefore I have a right to separate. Now, then you have kids involved, and that complicates it. And Prabhupada did say if it's incompatible, separation, if it's agreeable, could be done, but he didn't want remarriage because he didn't want to set this standard. It doesn't work, separate. So, I would say as far as possible, figure out how to make it work. And it will require compromise for some time, until you're older, most likely. If you can't make it work, or you don't have, it's impossible for you to compromise beyond a certain threshold, especially if you've taken initiation, then yes, it may resolve itself naturally. It'd just be incompatible. Another thing you might want to consider is maybe not get initiated yet. Because if you're taking these vows and your wife can't follow, then it makes it even more difficult. So that's a consideration. Until she's able and ready, maybe better you don't take initiation. And just realize you have to kind of go through this. Now, someone may be sitting here and saying, but why should he make compromise? Because number one, he has kids. Number two, he has to be responsible. And number three, in the long run, it might actually be good for your Krishna consciousness. You go through that when you're 50, 60, you're over it. You've done it. Whereas if you leave it and you don't remarry, maybe when you're 50 and 60, you'll be missing the fact that you didn't have a close relation with your kids and didn't, have a grihastha life. So that's something to consider. So sometimes, and also another consideration, sometimes those difficulties purify you. So, I had grihastha life, I had certain ambitions, ideals, and it was much different than I thought, and, I've kind of popped the bubble of illusion. Now I'm 50, 60, I'm really over it, I'm ready to retire, I'm really ready to get involved full time, and it's very easy now to be renounced because I've been through it. So a lot of times men think they're more renounced than they are and they want to get out of it. And they get out of it to realize that a lot of their renunciation was actually coming from being in it and being involved in the difficulties of it. And that's why they were renounced. Not that they were actually renounced, but they were renounced because it was difficult. So that's something to consider. So sometimes those situations are okay, even though they're not okay. I did the grihastha thing, and I did what my wife wanted, and she wasn't a devotee, and we did what other people did, and I did it. And I saw what it was, and I really appreciate Krishna consciousness, that it's something different and special and like that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes?
So, Brahmacharya has 25 years to try now.
Say that again?
Brahmacharya ashram is for 25 years.
Brahmacharya ashram for 25 years.
Then again, Grihastha ashram, then Manaprasad, then sannyasi. So,
if you live 100.
Yeah, if you live 100.
I'd have to divide 4 by 75.
So, then what is the ratio of each ashram now?
What's the ratio of each ashram now? I think we have to start with the principle that what's going to be best for my Krishna consciousness. So, okay, let's say you want to get married, but you're a student and you figure, well, until I get a job and get settled, it won't be good, but I'm doing my master's and I'm then do PhD, so I won't be working till I'm like 28, right? So traditionally you would be married like 24, 22. So the best thing for your Krishna consciousness is wait to get married, get your job, get set up. Maybe not till you're 30, who knows, right? Or, oh, you got the job, but you don't make enough money and you won't get, till you're like 33, you won't get enough. So maybe you have to make that adjustment because doing it before would be too much pressure. And you wouldn't be able to properly practice sadhana. So we're always looking at what's going to be best for our Krishna consciousness first, as opposed to, well, getting married at 30 is too old. Prabhupada said it's too old. He said it's not, marriage after 30 is not enjoyable. But I think that was more of a material consideration because your wife's older, and maybe it's more enjoyable if you're married when you're 20 and she's 18 or something. You're 22, she's 18. But the primary consideration is not what's enjoyable as much as what is good for your Krishna consciousness. So you have to make those adjustments, you know. Should a man at 50 become Vanaprastha? Not if his kids are 10 years old. He'll have to wait till his kids are grown up, and you know, so he may not be Vanaprastha till he's 70. Or because he had kids later, or he had many kids, and, you know. So there are practical considerations according to your situation. And so you want to analyze it in terms of what's best. Like I was saying to him, okay, let's say I'm 50, I want to take Vanaprastha. Is that actually good for my kids? What's going to happen to them? And I take Vanaprastha and all my kids turn out to be hoodlums because they're left, you know, 3 boys left alone with a woman. By the time they're 16, they'll run the house. They'll threaten her. If you tell me what to do, we'll kill you. That happens. Even, it does happen. You know, there's meant to be a man in the house, especially when you have boys. Yes? Well, the boys will take it. I don't know about your country, but in other countries, boys will take advantage of their mother. You know, they're bigger than their mother. They'll threaten her. Demoniac society. So in that situation, you know, even their devotee boys, they're in the West, they're in that culture, they have to be disciplined. They need a man. So he takes Vanaprastha, he's qualified. His wife says it's okay, but it's not okay because you have to think of the kids. So you have to consider everything. Not just, 50 Vanaprastha says right there. I actually read it today. At the age of 50, you should be Vanaprastha. But that means your kids are grown up now. So you should have kids when you're like 20, 25 max. Now they're 25. You got married, this and that, your wife couldn't get pregnant, you went to different doctors, it wasn't until she's 30 and you're 35. Now you're not ready for Vanaprastha. Even think about it till you're 60. And your kid's got a disease, and if you leave, you can't, you know, you understand. Yeah. Okay. So those are general ideas we work with. I have to answer this. I have a lot of godbrothers who are 70 years old, and they're not sannyasis, and they're completely qualified to take sannyas. They have families, and they determine there's no advantage for them to be sannyasis. But they've, you know, and they're living with their wives, but they're Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means no sex. They're not accumulating more stuff. They're just fully dedicated to preaching. So you know, but it says they should be sannyasi by now, but they don't feel it's necessary. Then you have the other men who aren't qualified for sannyasa. So they're 75 and everyone's like, you should be sannyas, you know. He can't even get up in the morning. Why should he be sannyas? He knows 2 shlokas. He doesn't know the philosophy. So it's not just because he's 75 he should be sannyas. He should be qualified also. If he's not qualified, it'll just be a problem. Okay, next question.
As I heard one tape of Srila Prabhupada saying that sex is made for
procreation. Sex is for procreation.
Only once in a month in Grasshopper land.
For children, yeah, for children.
4 children.
After chanting 50 rounds.
After chanting 50, yeah. But what if the count is going more in 1 month?
The rounds are going more or the sex is going more?
In course is going more.
Yeah, you can increase the rounds, but not the sex. What if it is? You mean in a rare case, like you're doing it for enjoyment, or you're doing it because the wife's not pregnant and you need to do it more often?
It's for pregnant.
That you would have to take some guidance from senior grihastas about what to do.
Actually, this combination.
A combination of enjoyment and need. I mean, there might be cases where you've been trying to get pregnant and it's not happening, and they might say, okay, well, can we do it? If we only do it once a month at the rate we're going, we'd be grandmother and grandfather by the time we get pregnant. Can we do it more often? For a practical purpose, because maybe we're missing the day. You talk to senior grihastas about that. As far as enjoyment, I can tell you what Prabhupada said. When he talked about this, he said the whole point is to reduce it. So when people are asking questions like this, he would always say the point is to reduce it. But the practical reality is not everyone can reduce it. So first point is, if you think it's going to be a challenge for you, don't get initiated. Because when you're initiated, you're saying, I'm going to do it. To not get initiated yet is like saying, maybe I will, maybe I won't, I'll try, but I'm not sure. So once you get initiated, it's a little different. I mean, the principle is there for everybody, once a month. That's for initiated, non-initiated, in theory. Because it's sinful to try to have sex and not procreate. I mean, that's just the reality. But if you can't do it, why take initiation vows? So that's one point. And all I can say is, that's the principle. And with any principle, we always do our best to follow. And sometimes we're not perfect. And with that principle, definitely many devotees have failed. But the higher principle, or you could say in a sense the essential principle, is to follow it as best you can. And even if you don't, then recalibrate. How can I? What did I do wrong? That's the ideal. Now, the problem you run into is that one partner wants to, one partner doesn't. Then it gets more complicated. And then in those situations, you take guidance from senior Vaishnavas, because of every situation is different. And I can't tell you, well, in that case, it's okay. Because Prabhupada never said it. And one time he kind of said, well, if it's a question of the marriage will be destroyed, then sometimes grihastas will counsel, well, to save the marriage maybe, you might have to do it more than once a month. But once a month is a general principle, and then you get specific guidance. This is difficult once you take initiation, because you vowed to do it. If you didn't take initiation, you can, say, well, I'm too young, I'm not ready, I'm trying, but I didn't vow. There's not so much shame and guilt, even though it's not the best thing, for sure. But once you're initiated, it's harder, much harder. So, generally what I would tell devotees is, you first understand the principle. 50 rounds, once a month for procreation. That's the principle. Everyone agrees. You agree, I agree, okay. Okay, that's what we're going to shoot for. What if we don't always follow it? If we don't always follow it, still, that's what we're shooting for. That's the goal. And we want to do the best we can to get there. And whatever the best you can is may vary from couple to couple, but that's the goal. And I will admit it's not an easy goal. And I will admit that not every grihasta perfectly follows that goal. But the goal is to follow. And Prabhupada also said, I think this is an important answer for this and for anything. Prabhupada said, there's a big difference between accidental sin and intentional sin. Sometimes they would ask Prabhupada, what happens to somebody who does this? And Prabhupada would say, did he do it accidentally or did he do it intentionally? And if they said accidentally, Prabhupada would say that Krishna forgives him. Accidentally, I was just thinking today on the way over how it's so different living in India and America, and how we have the seeds of desire within our heart. And those seeds of desire, we also have the seeds of bhakti. And in the right situation, the seeds of bhakti become very strong. And in the wrong situation, the seeds of maya become strong. Something you're not even thinking of doing, and then you're in a certain environment, it becomes very strong. So that might be how an accidental, whatever the fall down is, or whatever the sin is, accidentally it happens. You weren't waking up with an intention to do it, but you got yourself into the situation, you had to go visit your relatives, and this happened, and after 3 weeks, you missed your rounds one day, and then, your old girlfriend from the village, and whoa, something happened. Maybe not a big thing, but something happened, that shouldn't have happened. It's circumstantial, it's accidental, it's forgivable. As opposed to, I'm going back to that village to seduce that girl. That's the whole different thing. So a lot of times in Grihastha life, with good Grihasthas, they're trying hard, but at early ages, when lust is strong, sometimes there's a problem. Accidental. So the point is, we should try to avoid it. And if both husband and wife are trying to avoid it, and they do their best, then what more can you do than that? Just keep chanting, studying, praying. Actually, I just wrote something about that I'll put on Dandavats, because somebody asked this question. How to do it, how to be celibate. And he said, we don't want to have kids. How can we do it? And I said, don't live together. Definitely. Or if you live in the same house, sleep separately and don't be in any compromised position. Because they don't want kids for a few years, because they're in school, and then they can't afford to have kids. And they're very afraid they might slip, and they're good devotees. Accidental. So you have to be really careful. Put up, some boundaries to protect yourself. Trump wants to build a wall. Wall's a good idea. I don't know about wall in Mexico, but a wall's a good idea around you. Where you have to protect yourself, build a wall. Because if you're on the other side of the wall, it could be dangerous, right? So we should end here because we've gone over time. Okay, everyone, build your wall. And, oh yes, we have my book, if you didn't get it last time, and we also have CDs. This is a book on japa that can really help you improve your japa. It's called Japa Affirmations. And then I have CDs on Grihastha life, on vows, other topics. Yeah, so I'm here today and tomorrow. So if you want to get some, yeah. We have a book, we have CDs on Guru Tattva, improving relationships, vows. This is very good. I'm doing an online course on vows to deal with this problem, and I am doing an online course on sexual purity. So these two things, to give support to our vows, and especially to our sexual vows. And this is on marriage. It's like 30 lectures on marriage. So if you're interested, you can get these. And then we have the Japa book. If you want, I can sign it also. So today and tomorrow I'll be here. Okay? This will help you with your Japa, money back guarantee. If this doesn't help you with your Japa, then send me an email with your address and I'll mail you 100 rupees. This is my money back guarantee. If this doesn't double or triple the quality of your japa within 5 days, then I'll give you your money back. Is that fair? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.